name is Leona Brandwene. I serve as the Associate Director of the program. I also serve as a coordinating instructor, and I also happen to be a graduate of the program. So I'm going to take the next 30 minutes or so to tell you a little bit more about this program that I love so much. So as we begin to think about positive psychology, we're going to frame up our agenda this evening by covering 5 different areas. The positive psychology overview, we'll speak about the MAPP program, of course, in depth, and then do a deep dive into 3 aspects of the MAPP program: our faculty, our students, and our alumni too. Right now, I'd like to spend a little bit of time going over positive psychology for you. Now, many of you may be familiar with this gentleman here, and probably nobody's name in the world is more associated with positive psychology than Martin Seligman. Marty is the founding director of the MAPP program here at the University of Pennsylvania. And many of you may know that back in 1998, when Marty was elected to be the president of the American Psychological Association, he declared his platform based on 2 things. One was on addressing ethno-political conflict, but the other was really focused on calling all psychologists around the world to begin to think about how they could focus more on making life better for everyone, and particularly thinking about how human beings could flourish. So Marty's platform really opened up the stage and was a call to invest more research dollars, more focus, and more study in this area that has become known as positive psychology. And so positive psychology is the scientific study of strengths and virtues that enable individuals and communities, and really society at large, to thrive. Marty is joined in this endeavor here at the University of Pennsylvania by Dr. James Pawelski. James is the Director of Education at the Positive Psychology Center, and he is the founding director of the MAPP program. James currently studies the role of the humanities in human flourishing and continues to teach in the program, as does Marty. So let's spend a little bit more time talking about positive psychology itself. So after Marty's 1998 positive psychology address, and when he was the president of the APA, that has spurred a massive growth in the field of positive psychology. There are hundreds of researchers around the world that gather together and convene in international conferences, but are also working and studying different domains of positive psychology that have resulted in a burgeoning literature. The amount of publication in positive psychology in scholarly journals has virtually skyrocketed in the last 10 years. In addition to the study of the different aspects of positive psychology, there are growing professional applications of the research, and we see those in some very diverse areas, such as education, in the world of business, in coaching, also in medicine, law, and psychotherapy, social services too, and many other corners of the world. Basically, if you think about anywhere that a human being dwells in the world, that's an opportunity for positive psychology to be applied, because positive psychology is about helping people to grow and to flourish. The first degree program in positive psychology was also launched, and that's what we're going to be spending a little bit more time on this evening, and that's the Penn MAPP program, which was launched in 2005. But in addition to that, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that there are degree programs that are growing all over the world. There are programs in the United Kingdom, in Denmark, and Australia, just to name a few. And then lastly, as the field of positive psychology was continuing to grow, the International Positive Psychology Association was launched. James Pawelski, who you met just a few moments ago, is actually the founding executive director of the International Positive Psychology Association and continues to serve as its volunteer executive director even here today in 2017. If you want more information about the IPA network, you can go to the website that's listed on the screen. So let me spend a little bit of time talking about the Positive Psychology Center. I had mentioned Marty's presidential address to the APA, but in the time since then, in addition to the study that he was engaging in positive psychology, Marty launched what was called the PPC, or Positive Psychology Center, here at the University of Pennsylvania. There are a number of key initiatives that have come out of the center. In particular, I'll point out that bullets number 2 and 3 on that list were the early initiatives within the PPC, and those included the resilience training programs that launched really in schools around the Philadelphia area, and since then have grown and been implemented in the military, in different branches, and also in areas as diverse as medicine and even professional sports teams. In addition to that, a positive health grant and a positive neuroscience grant was activated here at the PPC. Since that time, the amount of research that's emerged from the PPC has continued to explode. I'd like to mention a number of other key initiatives that are enacting research in positive psychology. Those include the World Wellbeing Project, which was actually founded by one of our MAPP alumni, Johannes Eichstadt. In addition, the Primals Initiative was founded by one of our MAPP alumni, which seeks to research those specific universal assessments that people use in looking at their worldview that then have a massive influence on their ability to flourish psychologically. Finally, two other things I'd love to mention are the Humanities and Human Flourishing Project, which has been led by Dr. James Pawelski. He most recently landed a $2.5 million grant from the Templeton Religion Trust in order to research humanities and human flourishing. And then finally, another one of our MAPP alums, Emily Larson, has worked on the International Positive Education Network, which is now located in London, but serves educators from around the globe who are seeking to learn more about positive psychology. Finally, the last bit that I'd like to mention that came out of the PPC is the MAPP program, and that's what we're going to do a deep dive on here this evening. So as we think about the Master of Applied Positive Psychology program, James came to the PPC back in January of 2005 with the intention of launching the program in the fall of 2005. So admission season was already underway. And James loves to tell the story that the deans really worked with them to manage expectations. When a new master's program launches, typically one can expect, if it's a really fairly robust program, about 10 to 12 individuals who might come and matriculate in the program that year. So I'd like to share with you our first class from the Master of Applied Positive Psychology program, which I think is exemplary of how much interest there was in positive psychology in 2005 and in learning what it takes to help individuals and communities to flourish. So that first class, there were well over 100 applications, and we had well over 30 that joined us in that first class. And so everybody scratched their heads and said, well, there's a lot of interest right now, but is that going to sustain itself? Perhaps that's just a fluke. Well, then in 2006, another class joined us, and then in 2007, yet another class came to the table in 2008, and I won't even read the dates, but I'm going to go ahead and click through each of our classes that has joined us in the Master of Applied Positive Psychology program over the last 12 years. You can see that the number does not diminish. In fact, it continues to grow each year as more and more people come to study and learn about what it takes to help individuals and communities to flourish. I wanted to mention that we also had a celebration at the 10-year point. Let me go back to that photo. If I can bring it up, I don't think I can, where we had an actual 10-year celebration celebrating 10 years within the MAPP program, and since then we have welcomed 3 more classes. And I'd like to introduce this year's class, which is our 2017-18 class, affectionately known as MAPP 13, our lucky class. And that's their photo from earlier this year in September of 2017. We're delighted to have them with us. So as you can see, the program has been flourishing, I dare say, and it's been growing over time. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about the program and really MAPP's educational design. MAPP offers you an extensive academic preparation that covers 1 year of full-time academic study. And I want to underscore those words, full-time academic study. It is constructed as a hybrid model, which means that our students can domicile wherever they are around the globe and travel into the MAPP program about every 3 weeks for each semester during the fall and spring semesters in order to learn from experts around the world in positive psychology and also to work on earning their master's degree. In between their times when they are with us on campus, they engage in distance learning between on-sites, and I'll speak a little bit more about our platform that we use to enact that. Finally, I wanted to mention that the MAPP program is a professional master's degree. So if you think about other professional degrees, such as a Master of Business Administration, which works on applying science out into the field, the Master of Applied Positive Psychology importantly focuses on the A in MAPP, and that's an applied degree. So this is typically not a research degree, although about 10% of our graduates will engage in primary research, but it really focuses on applying positive psychology in different domains. And importantly, it is not a licensure, nor is it a credentialed degree. It is intended that our graduates will move on and apply positive psychology in fields in which they are already credentialed or already hold some expertise. So let's continue to talk about the MAPP educational design. And I had mentioned earlier about the hybrid format of the MAPP program. Importantly, it enables our students to continue working full-time in the area that they live, which is pretty exciting and really opens up opportunities for many professionals that are already achieving great things in their own professional career to simultaneously earn their degree in positive psychology. So residency is not required, and some of our students fly in from all over the world. This year we have one student, I think our longest traveling student flies in from Hong Kong for each on-site. But in the past we've had students that have flown in from Europe, that have flown in from Africa, that have flown in from Australia, and even New Zealand. So our students do come to us from all over the globe, nearly every continent. We have not penetrated Antarctica yet, but we'll see whether or not that happens sometime in the future. And it also enhances the educational experience because our students are able to be exposed to thinking from all around the globe. That diversity, not only in professional background, but in geographic experience, really lends to enriching the classroom conversation. The last thing that I'll mention is that I keep hinging on this idea of diversity and geographic diversity and the opportunities that a hybrid program offers. In addition to diversity amongst our student body, it also gives us the opportunity to experience some diversity amongst our faculty too. We are so fortunate to have a core set of faculty here at the University of Pennsylvania that are experts in positive psychology, but we're also pretty fortunate to be able to welcome experts from around the United States and around the world who come in to share their expertise in areas of research. So let's dive in and let's speak a little bit more about the MAPP curriculum. And I think perhaps the best way that I can illustrate that is by helping you to see what the courses look like right now. So I'm going to take you through the 2017 fall semester. And in the fall semester, we have 4 courses, and I'll go through each of those just briefly. The first is the Introduction to Positive Psychology, which of course is taught by Marty Seligman. We like to joke at Penn that it's a little bit like learning about Buddhism from the Buddha, since Marty was the founder of the field. So that's an exciting class, and Marty is definitely an engaged professor. He has commented more than once that his very favorite thing to do is to come and teach in the MAPP program. So we're excited that he continues to do so. In addition to that, we have a research methods and evaluation course that's taught by our own Angela Duckworth. This is a course that focuses on helping our students to understand statistical methods and how to read and digest information that's coming out in the scholarly literature. While most people hear the word statistics and they think boring in the same word, I can assure you that statistics with Angela Duckworth are anything but. She is consistently rated as one of our best professors and is able to make that topic incredibly exciting and engaging for our students, so we feel very lucky. I also wanted to mention that the Foundations of Positive Interventions course is taught by our founding director, and that's James Pawelski. So James, of course, has been with the MAPP program all 13 years of its existence. And then finally, we're able to pull together a course that spans a variety of lecturers from around the country, and it's titled Perspectives on Well-Being. I coordinate that course, and I'm fortunate to be able to welcome 6 different faculty from around the United States. I'll just mention a few of them. Michael Boehm I wanted to highlight, of course, because he's here from the University of Pennsylvania and works for the Penn Program for Mindfulness. But we also have Isaac Prilatensky from the University of Miami. Paul Bloom joins us from Yale, Barry Schwartz from Swarthmore, John Haidt from NYU, and then John Rady from Harvard University. So that gives you an idea of the fall semester, and now the spring semester, which I'll cover also briefly, is focused more on applying some of the research and empirical literature that you've digested during the fall semester into actually doing some lab experiences and seeing how that works in what we like to call the very messy laboratory of the community. So I'll start with Applying Positive Interventions in Institutions, which is a service learning course where our students get to roll up their sleeves and work with some of our community partners from not only in the city of Philadelphia, but around the world too, in applying positive psychology in their unique circumstances and with unique populations. We have Positive Psychology in Individuals, which is taught by Karen Rivich and Judy Salzberg-Levick. I also wanted to mention Judy is a clinical psychologist and also supervises our Capstone course during the summer, which I'll mention shortly. Judy and Karen are a dynamic duo, and the two of them have been working on probably one of the largest applications of positive psychology in the world in their Master Resilience Training, which is the work that they did in comprehensive soldier fitness with the U.S. military. We have a positive education course, and I'm delighted to mention we are welcoming a new faculty member this year who brings expertise in neuroscience. Allison Mackey works both with us as well as the psychology department, and her area of expertise is in understanding how to apply learning interventions across the lifespan so that they are well timed for where the brain is in its development. And then finally, James teaches again in his most beloved topic, the humanities and human flourishing, which is an area that is very near and dear to his heart. And we even get to do some field trips for that particular course, which is always very exciting for our class. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention perhaps the most important course, and that's our 2018 summer semester, and that is the Capstone project. I had mentioned earlier that Judy Salzberg is the person who supervises that project. But each of our graduates who are working on their capstones are working one-on-one with an advisor who is an expert in their area of interest as they seek to fuse their own professional expertise with what they've learned in positive psychology to date. And this really caps their experience, but we also like to say that the capstone serves as a stepping stone because this is the project that then helps to launch them into the work that they're doing in applying positive psychology. So how does this all work? I mentioned that this is a hybrid program. And so you may look at this schedule and say, a couple of days, 5 times a semester, that doesn't seem as if it's too much of a time commitment, but I definitely wanted to emphasize that this is a full-time course of study. So while you are on campus for only a short period of time, 5 days during immersion week, and then for a long weekend, 4 subsequent weekends during the fall semester, in between each of those weekends is what we affectionately refer to as a distance learning period, or DL period. During that time, our students are working through online platforms, through virtual technologies like teleconferencing and other technologies to connect with professors and to connect with assistant instructors and to connect with each other as they work on integrating their knowledge that they're gaining during their on-sites and in the reading in between. How much work is involved in that distance learning period, you may ask? Well, we do actually survey our students in order to understand how much time is involved, and typically, on average, our students will invest about 25 hours per week and during each of the weeks in those distance learning periods. The range on that, I think that the lowest I've ever heard a student report is about 15 hours per week, and about the maximum I've ever heard a student report is somewhere around 40 or 45 hours a week for those students who choose not to work and choose to engage in full-time study. But by and large, it settles somewhere around the average of about 25 hours per week. Now, I know that's more than a coffee break, and so we certainly do recommend that all of our students plan for that if you're thinking about matriculating in the program to ensure that you are making enough time in your life, both professionally and personally, in order to engage in your studies. The spring semester follows much the same model as the fall semester, and there are distance learning periods in between for each of those two. Okay, let's transition right now, and I'd like to spend just a little bit of time speaking about our faculty. I had mentioned earlier that we've got some core faculty here at the University of Pennsylvania who have areas of expertise related to positive psychology. Marty, as you know, as one of the founding fathers of positive psychology, has a broad array of expertise in this area and speaks in his course about the history of positive psychology, but importantly frames that around his construct of PERMA, which is his construct of well-being, which includes positive emotion, engagement, positive relationships, meaning, and achievement. And he also focuses on some of his work around learned optimism, or as he's transitioning to right now, the concept of learned mastery. James Pawelski in the upper right that you see there, who is with the program too, is at Penn. And then Angela, of course, many people recognize for her expertise, not just in statistics and research methods, but also for her deep expertise in studying the concept of grit, a character strength that she has learned helps to predict success, and particularly academic success among students. In addition, we welcome faculty from around the country. So you'll notice that Marty and Barb are sharing a laugh up there in the upper left-hand corner. Barbara Fredrickson from the University of North Carolina has joined us each year in the MAPP program. And then in addition, we welcome faculty from all around. Barry Schwartz, I believe, has a perfect attendance record here in the MAPP program. Barry was formerly with Swarthmore, and now he's a professor emeritus there and still lectures at UC Berkeley now. Paul Bloom joins us from Yale, John Haidt from NYU. You'll notice David Cooperrider is there hiding behind a funny hat that some of the students made for him during one of his years while he was lecturing on appreciative inquiry here in the MAPP program. David joins us from Case Western Reserve, and then John Rady from Harvard. This is just a very small subset of the faculty that we welcome into the MAPP program each year. We have over 20 faculty that actually come in and visit with us between the fall and spring semesters each year, which you can imagine really enriches the experience for our students. So they are not just getting the Penn perspective on flourishing, they are getting a well-rounded perspective from a variety of different professors who are studying in each of their different universities. So I've mentioned a little bit about the faculty and how fortunate we are to have them come from all around the world and really around North America to work with us on positive psychology. But this program would not be a program without our students who are also coming to us from around the world. I'm sharing with you a couple of photos here. We like to ensure that we are walking our talk in our classrooms so that that lectures are never boring, but that our students feel engaged during their educational experience here at the University of Pennsylvania. So you can see some smiling faces from around the room. It's not to say we never concentrate and work hard. We do that too, but by and large, we like to have fun doing it. But you'll notice that many of our students are joining us from all around the world. I had mentioned to you earlier that diversity is something that's very important to us at the MAPP program, and it's something that we like to focus on from a variety of different perspectives. I'm sharing with you here just a few demographics about our MAPP classroom. In general, we find that the average age is in the mid-30s when a student comes to us from the program, typically a mid-career professional that has already achieved a great deal within their own professional domain and is now looking to integrate positive psychology into their profession. But our ages do range, so averages, fall around the midpoint, but we do have students who are undergraduates and joining us right out of undergraduate and going to the MAPP program to serve as pre-professional training before they move on into another field of study like medicine or law. And I believe that the oldest individual that we had join us in our classroom was 72 when he matriculated in our classroom, and he happened to share the classroom with the youngest member of the MAPP program too, so you can imagine that we had some wonderful and enriching discussions that year. In terms of age, we've got diversity, but we also have diversity in terms of nationality. We have been so fortunate to welcome MAPPsters not only from North America, but from an additional 29 countries from around the world. And you can see some of them listed here. I had mentioned earlier that we have a student this year that's joining us from Hong Kong. Last year we had a student who flew in from India and another one that flew in from Australia for each on-site. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention we've got our first student from the United Arab Emirates who's joining us this year. So you'll see that listed there too. And then a variety of other countries too. You can imagine what that means for our classroom conversations. And even for our students who are domiciled in Philadelphia, when you recognize that sitting next to you, in the seat next to you, is a student that has spent 25 hours on a plane in order to share that privileged space with you in the classroom, it sure does make you pay a great deal of attention because you don't want to waste a minute. Here is just a quick image. This was actually something that one of my classmates had put together. She had brought a map to our classroom one year and asked everybody to put a pin where they were hailing from, and so you can see that that was just one class and the diversity, the geographic diversity that was coming to us that particular map year. And not only are we bringing people in who share some geographic diversity, but also professional diversity too. And this is a critical aspect of our MAPP community because the diversity professionally really enriches the conversations within the classroom as individuals who have a background in health or medicine are sharing that space and learning from other individuals and how they are raising well-being and working on enacting flourishing in educational settings. So you can see we welcome people in the field of health and medicine. You might expect to see psychiatrists on that list, but you might be surprised to see physical therapists, dietitians, and surgeons that have joined us in the classroom. In an educational context, not only do we have classroom teachers that come and join us from public, charter, and private schools, but also administrators who are looking to create flourishing environments within their own particular context. We're delighted to welcome people from the business world, because when we're thinking about raising well-being amongst individuals, where most humans gather and where they spend a great deal of their time is in their professional lives, at least for many people, 8 hours a day. So it's a wonderful place to be able to work with people and help to raise flourishing and well-being so that people can really experience well-being while they work. And you'll notice a variety of different fields, from human resources to executives to people that are venture capitalists who have come to our classroom. We are very delighted to say that we have welcomed a pretty significant number of attorneys to our classroom, both practicing attorneys as well as teachers. And currently we have actually 2 attorneys that serve as assistant instructors in our program, one who's a practicing attorney and one who teaches, actually at the Duke School of Law. And then finally, we welcome individuals from a variety of different professions. Social service organizations are represented here. Journalism is represented here. We've welcomed politicians to our classroom. We have welcomed people from the clergy to our classroom. And so you can see that there is such diversity here from different professions. But when you reflect on what positive psychology is about, it actually makes sense. Positive psychology is about helping people to live better lives. So anywhere that you can find a human being in the world is a great place to apply positive psychology. Here's a quick image of our classroom and some of our happy and engaged students, but not only do they engage in conversation while they are in the classroom, they engage in conversation outside the classroom. Some of the work that they do is done in small groups, which we love to refer to as cohorts. And you can see a cohort that's busy at work here, thinking through a project that they are working on during the spring semester. And then the conversations extend outside the classroom too. And many of our students are so engaged in their topic that they almost can't stop talking about it. And so those conversations will sustain themselves on the sidewalks around the University of Pennsylvania and back to where everybody is domiciled. So that's a little bit about our students, but our students do grow up. They graduate and they go on to become alumni. And let me share a little bit about what our alumni are doing. And you may be asking the question, well, what can I do with a MAPP degree? Well, we asked our Alumni Association that question a couple of years ago, because so many diverse professions come to our program that sometimes it can be almost dizzying how many different applications of positive psychology are emerging. So a couple of the different areas where our alumni are making a difference is in publishing. Some of them are authors of books, some of them are authors of scholarly journal articles, as well as popular press articles. And so you can see a variety of different ways that our alumni are sharing positive psychology with the world. Many of our alumni serve as business owners and CEOs, but in addition to that, I also would be remiss if I didn't say that so much of the work of positive psychology is interdisciplinary in nature that many of our alums go back to their workplaces and are integrating and applying positive psychology in unique and exciting ways. Some of our alumni actually go on to serve as leaders in a variety of different areas in advancing the field. The Canadian, Chinese, and Colombian Positive Psychology Associations were all started by alumni of our program. In addition to that, we have MAPP alumni that are involved in the International Positive Psychology Association, as well as other national and regional associations around the world, and we have many alums that are teaching at the university level. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what our students are doing. And as they're thinking about spreading positive psychology, one of the unique ways that they can do that is by sharing some of the work that they've done while they're at the University of Pennsylvania. The image that you see in front of you is an administrative map that we see from what is called Scholarly Commons. Now, Scholarly Commons is a public good that is offered by the University of Pennsylvania, where some of the emerging research and applications in a whole variety of different fields that emerges from the University of Pennsylvania is shared with the larger community and greater world. Our graduates frequently go on to publish their capstones on Scholarly Commons, and you can see here in each of those bubbles the number of downloads that we've seen of capstones from around the world. Now, I just want to hinge on just even one of those bubbles. If you look in northeastern North America, it says 29,090. I want to just refer you to the fact that we have 450 alumni. So even if you took 450 capstones and you added up all of these and divided them up, it gives you an idea of how much positive psychology is beginning to spread around the globe, thanks to our alumni sharing it through their capstones. Here's a few more images of our classroom. We each year host a wonderful MAPP Summit, which is a positive psychology mini conference that's exclusively for our students and our alumni, where they present posters about the work that they're doing applying positive psychology, and you can see some of the engagement that occurs around that as they continue to think about and advance the field and always continue to ask, what can we be doing better in order to help people to flourish and to experience well-being? So that gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the different areas in positive psychology that our graduates are working. And we've also done a bit of a deep dive into how the program is structured. We've mentioned a little bit about our faculty. We've talked a little bit about the schedule and what you might experience in the MAPP program. You've heard a lot from me, and I've been speaking for a long time now, and I'm sure you could use a break from my voice. So at this point, I'd love to transition over to two of our faculty members. Marty Seligman and Angela Duckworth are going to share some of their thoughts in working with the MAPP program with you right now.
I've been teaching in MAPP for, I guess this is my 7th year, so nearly since the beginning. And I think before I started teaching formally as a professor, I was a teaching instructor helping with Marty Seligman's course. So I feel like I've been with MAPP since its inception, and I love it. I teach research statistics and research methods, which we offer in the fall, because I think the focus of the MAPP program is really to go beyond, self-help and intuition, and to advance students to a point where they actually have a really firm scientific understanding of these concepts, flourishing, meaning, character, well-being, and equip them in ways that they wouldn't be able to do the same kind of work had they not come to MAPP. So I teach that every fall, and I love it. We really try to have a hands-on approach. So there's a lot of reading of primary research articles. I teach them how to read a document like a graduate student or a professor would. We do statistics, so by the time they leave me, they have, I think, a fairly decent grasp of kind of first-year graduate statistics. And then we do a lot of sort of hands-on working on study designs as well, where, again, the students are actually constructing the studies and carrying them out, not just reading about it in a book. Love MAPP students. I mean, I really do. It's this kind of very unusual group because they are both outliers in their intellectual curiosity and their intellect itself, but also just on kindness and empathy. I mean, you just won't meet a nicer, more positive, happier, humane group of people. So every MAPP course, I think this cohort could never be as great as the last one, and every year I'm proven wrong. There's a lot of hugging, there's a lot of thanking. It's just a really terrific group. I mean, it's really my favorite class to teach.
Well, I've taught just about everything in psychology except statistics, I think, over the last 50 years. MAPP is the single best educational experience that I've had as a teacher and that I think my students have had. Before MAPP and before positive psychology, when I taught, for example, abnormal psychology, which I did for 25 years, I almost never heard the word life-changing. I hear the word life-changing all the time in positive psychology.
Welcome back. I hope that you enjoyed hearing from Marty and Angela. As you can probably see, they're both very excited and pleased about their work within the MAPP program. You'll notice that I have somebody joining me, and that is Erin Boczkowski. I'd like to introduce the coordinator of our program, but importantly, Erin not only is the linchpin that keeps this program together in terms of managing its budget and all of its administrative duties, but Erin also manages our admissions process too. And for many of you dialing in, you're probably interested in what it takes to apply to the MAPP program and understanding what's required. So Erin's going to walk you through that right now. Erin?
Thanks, Leona. Hello, everybody. So I'll just do a quick overview of sort of what's involved in the application to MAPP. So it starts with a few components. Your resume, we'll want to see that, as well as an essay. And those questions are on our website. Frequently people want to know some details about the essay. So as far as length, it can be 4 pages max, but that can be single space, double space, so it's up to you how you format it, and how much you have to say will sort of determine the length. We'll also need 3 letters of recommendation. So another question that comes up around these a lot of times is, who should write my letters? I mean, really, it's up to you who you think will write the best letter, but sort of general tips are, you know, first of all, if you can get an academic reference, we recommend that you get at least 1 academic reference. But that's not feasible for a lot of our applicants who have been out of school for a long time and don't have relationships with their professors from the past. So in that case, all professional references are certainly fine as well. And in the case of professional references, you know, the more professional the relationship, the better. So, and then also if it's somebody who you report to rather than somebody who reports to you who's writing the letter, that can make for a stronger letter. And lastly, I would say the more you can take a minute to sort of chat with the person who's writing the letter and fill them in on you know, your plan, so they can really speak specifically to not just general statements about how smart and great you are, which I'm sure they will also say, but but also to, you know, how you will be successful in your application of positive psychology after the program. There's an application fee, and then also there are some potentially standardized tests. So the GRE is not required for many of our applicants. However, it is required if you earned your bachelor's degree within 3 years of the year to which you're applying. So for fall of 2018, if you earned your bachelor's degree after the spring semester of 2015, then you do need to take the GRE. Also, for non-native speakers of English, we require the TOEFL, and our school code for both of those is 2986. And then lastly, we'll need your transcripts. And that includes really any courses you took for credit, undergraduate, graduate, even if you took like a transfer course from somewhere, we want to see all those transcripts. And for the purpose of the application, they can be unofficial copies. So if you can download them online, or if you have copies sitting around, you can scan them and upload them, and that's fine. And then only when you're admitted do we need official copies. And one other note about transcripts would be for international applicants who went to school outside of the US, your transcripts need to be evaluated and potentially translated by World Education Services. You can see the website there, and we require the course-by-course evaluation option. And lastly, just as far as timing, we release decisions typically around the end of June. So that would be June 2018 for this intake.
Aaron, is it worthwhile for some of our students who have attended international schools with the World Education Services to get a jump on that as quickly as they can?
Yes, I know that can be quite a lengthy process, like obtaining your transcripts from the school depending on the country and the school, and then the whole process that Wes goes through to evaluate them. So if you know you're going to apply, you can even start that now. Even if Penn gets your transcripts before you've submitted your application, that's okay. They'll be kept on file and then matched up with your application once you submit it.
Wonderful, great. So thanks, Aaron. So if you're interested in applying to the Master of Applied Positive Psychology program, we would love to welcome your application. And those are, as Aaron mentioned, due on March 1st of 2018. At this point, I think that we're prepared to perhaps open it up to the audience and to entertain some questions that are coming in. So our colleague, Laura Taylor, who serves as the assistant coordinator within the program, is going to be capturing your questions and translating those over to us so that we can answer some of those. And I see that we already have our first question. So the first question is, what do you look for in an applicant? I think I'm going to toss that over to Aaron first as our admissions maestro.
Sure, thanks. So, generally this breaks down into 3 areas of assessment. So the first would be academic ability. So this is mostly looking at your transcript, seeing what sorts of courses you took, what grades you got in them. We like to see an undergrad GPA of 3.0 or above. Also part of this category is a demonstration to do quantitative and analytical work. So again, this is looking at your transcript and the types of courses you took. So in general, this whole academic piece is mostly assessed through your transcript, but it is also, we might look at the quality of your essay, and especially if you have academic references, those could be factored into this part as well. The next chunk of assessment is either professional accomplishment or professional promise for some of our younger applicants. So this is mostly assessed through your resume, looking at your career trajectory, where you're situated in your organization, and do you have, are you in a place to have some influence in your organization? Promise is obviously a little harder to assess, but types of things that would indicate professional promise are leadership roles, either in volunteer work or in clubs or sports activities or things you did as an undergrad. And then the last piece of assessment we call program fit, and it's actually made up of 3 sort of smaller interrelated pieces. So the first is your knowledge of positive psychology. So how much do you already know? Can you cite authors and concepts correctly? And things like that. So the next piece would be dedication to positive psychology. So things like, there are a lot of certificate programs out there now. If you've taken one of those, that shows some sort of dedication, sort of throwing it back to your knowledge. Having done a lot of self-study and a lot of reading also demonstrates a dedication, and really sort of seeing MAPP as a very integral part of your professional plans for applying positive psychology. And lastly, that leads directly to this, is having that professional vision for applying what you learn here. So obviously we want you to be interested in positive psychology, but we want to see a little more than that, where it's beyond an interest and really there's a long-term sort of professional goal for applying positive psychology to your work.
I want to emphasize that last point, because as I think about the applicants who come to the MAPP program and those that end up matriculating in our classroom, one of the most distinguishing factors, we've talked about the diversity professionally, the diversity geographically, and so there are a lot of different backgrounds that come into the MAPP program, but one thing that's a shared characteristic of all MAPP students is that they share a desire to change their corner of the world for the better. So there's a sense of mission that they have about raising well-being and really improving flourishing in their particular corner of the world. So that would be one more distinguishing characteristic that I might add to your list.
Definitely.
So wonderful. So we've got a couple of other questions that are coming in, and a lot of questions that are related to admissions. And so I'm going to cover a couple of those, and perhaps you and I could ping pong back and forth. There's a question about how many applications do we receive each year. So each year we receive over 150 applications, and I would say that the range on that has been anywhere from 150 to 200.
I think the highest was close to 240. Typically and for the last several years, it's been more like 180-ish, give or take a few. And then we shoot for a class size of around 45, so it depends on how many people accept the offer, but we usually accept around 50 or so students out of that group.
Yeah. And a couple of questions have come up about financial aid availability. And so we actually are very excited to report 2 new opportunities in terms of financial aid. Aaron, did you want to speak about those too?
Sure. So I'll start. There's one that is pretty specific. It's from the Bei-Shantang Foundation, and this scholarship is really geared towards people who are from Hong Kong and also in education. So it's a really sort of niche scholarship, but it's a full scholarship if it's awarded. And the other one is something we've been working on for a while in conjunction with our Alumni Association, and it's the Chris Peterson Memorial Fellowship. So in memory of Chris Peterson, who passed about in 2012, I think. After that, our Alumni Association started a scholarship fund in his name, and it has grown into it covers about half of the MAPP tuition currently. And this is, there are several sort of factors for this. So it's need-based, there's a diversity criteria, and then also really what Chris Peterson always said is that other people matter. So having some sort of demonstrated service to other people, either through volunteer work or if that's what you do professionally, that's also good.
Yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out to our Alumni Association. So Chris Peterson, who many of you know as the author of the Character Strengths and Virtues book, who worked very closely with Marty on that and actually was one of the founding faculty of the MAPP program, had passed away, but influenced so many students during his tenure here in the Master of Applied Positive Psychology program that they were inspired to really begin to enact his vision that other people matter by putting together this scholarship in order to enable diverse voices to find a pathway to matriculate in the MAPP program. So a huge debt of gratitude to our alumni who so generously fund that scholarship, as well as to the university too. We're very grateful.
Can I just add, you can find information about both of those on the financial aid page of our website, and there's also a link to the application for each of them. The applications are relatively short, so they're due right around the same time as your MAPP application.
Erin, do you want to talk a little bit at all about financial aid for those people who are not going to apply for a scholarship? How would they apply for financial aid?
Sure. So obviously you can get loans. So the best resource for that really is to contact Penn's Student Financial Services Office. But you fill out a federal form, a FAFSA form, and you can, we actually recommend if you're applying, you can fill out the form and submit it so that you're as far along as you can be. And then if you're admitted, you can sort of finish the process so that you don't start from scratch after you receive your admission decision. Otherwise, we've had people fund MAPP in different ways. Several people get assistance from their employer, so that's definitely something you should look into. There are military, Penn participates in the Yellow Ribbon program, so and we had somebody come as a Pat Tillman scholar, so you can look into that. And then just more generally, there are a lot of scholarships offered by, typically they're like mission-driven organizations looking to help certain groups of people in certain professions or things. So if you can give some thought to, what would sort of, how you might fit into that, and just spend time online, because unfortunately I'm not aware of like a centralized resource for locating them, so it really takes some legwork, but we've had people come up with pretty creative solutions for funding.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've had another question come up that's focusing on travel and timing for the on-sites. So I'd like to share, if I read between the lines on that, I see what's it really going to be like when I come in for some of the on-sites. So let me share with you a little bit about that. So our typical on-site is 3 days. We start on Friday mornings, roughly around 9 o'clock, and we close on Sunday afternoons at 4. The only exception to that is during our kickoff week, which we refer to as Immersion Week. And Immersion Week instead starts at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday morning and goes until Sunday at 4 p.m. Now, in between, for a typical on-site, Friday to Sunday, so in between, James likes to say, we own your souls. And while that may be a little bit of an overstatement, it's not too much of an overstatement. It's pretty busy while you're here. So expect that you will spend about 8 or 9 hours in the classroom itself. And then after classroom hours, there are sometimes activities. We have receptions. We really do believe that other people matter, so we like to spend time with other people and with one another as we continue to digest the information that we're learning and further refine some of the ideas and thinking that come out of here. So our students like to get together after hours in order to be able to do work together, to be able to talk to one another, to learn from each other. We often say in the program that the faculty may be the faculty, but the students might as well be faculty too, because we learn so much from the students who are bringing their own experience to the table. So after hours, while class may end at 5 or 6 p.m., depending upon the day and the schedule, often there will be activities after hours. We bring in guest lectures. We welcome Paul Rosin from the PPC. We've welcomed George Valiant, who has written a number of books and supervised the Harvard Grant Study. We have assistant instructors that lead discussion groups around applications of positive psychology in the workplace or facilitation or other. I almost can't even list all of the opportunities, even during the spring. So Marty loves the use of cinema as a teaching tool, and so he actually started a MAPP tradition, which are called MAPP movie nights during the spring. So on 3 weekends during the spring, we will get a movie, we'll come into the class, and we get dinner and popcorn, and we all hang out and watch a movie together, and then we talk about it using a positive psychology lens, and it's a really fun environment to be a part of. The last thing that I'll mention is field trips. We have some field trips for the humanities course that we engage in. I don't want to go too far with revealing what those are, but there will be trips to museums or to other activities that are germane to the humanities and human flourishing that people engage in. Anything you'd add to that, Aaron?
I think you covered a lot. I might just say, that sounded like a lot. There are also opportunities for free time and student organized and led sort of social events to get to know Philadelphia and things too. So.
Very much so, very much so. And Marty and his wife Mandy are always very kind about welcoming our class into their home to kick off each year so that they can get to know the new class and help everybody to get to know one another better. Mm-hmm. So there's always something that's going on. So when you do come into Philadelphia, the one thing that I would recommend is that if you have family that are in the area that might expect you to be able to do family activities on the evenings of a MAPP weekend, I would lower their expectations around that just a little bit. It's busy. And when you're in for a MAPP weekend, it is usually very much focused on MAPP-related activities. And we find that many of our students feel as though there just aren't enough hours in a day when they come in. So please do anticipate that when you do come into Philadelphia, well, James says we own your souls. We may not quite own your souls, but you donate your souls. And you do so willingly because the content and the information is so exciting. So it does really create a pretty robust experience. Fatiguing for sure, but also exciting and enriching at the same time. One thing I would also mention for those of you that are going to be traveling in from afar, many of you have probably been to a conference before where the closing keynote might have 50% of the audience there because people are trying to catch early flights out of town. We do not dismiss early at the MAPP program. So Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock is our hard stop. We will promise that we will get you out the door at 4 o'clock, but we will not promise that we will get you out the door before 4 o'clock. So please plan, if you're going to be flying out, that you'll need a little bit of transit time to get to the airport in order to be able to go wherever it is you're going back to. Mm-hmm. So another question has come up. What do you look for in applicants that are recent undergraduates? And do you recommend waiting to enter the program after some time in the workforce? Aaron, do you want to take the first crack at that one?
Sure, yeah. So I think a lot of the things we're looking for are the same, things that I went over. For recent undergraduates, though, we're definitely most likely looking at professional promise rather than professional accomplishment. But otherwise, a lot of the things are the same. So, regarding the second part of the question about waiting, I think it depends. I think it depends on where your thoughts are about your application. A lot of our younger students have gone on, they know they want to get a PhD, for example, so they apply to MAPP and come here first and go on to a PhD program, or we recently had a person come in directly from undergrad who wanted to go to med school. They came to MAPP and went to med school. So I think in those cases it makes a lot of sense. If you're sort of unsure about how you want to apply or what you're going to be doing professionally, then I think it makes sense to get some of that experience first and then come back to MAPP after you have some idea of how you're going to apply what you learn here.
Yeah, well stated. I think that really covers it. I wanted to mention the graduate who you mentioned who came right out of undergraduate and used it as pre-professional training for medical school. She actually, you might ask the question, well, what would a new graduate going into medical school do with their MAPP degree? Her capstone was actually on physician burnout and physician flourishing, And just 6 short weeks after she started medical school, she was actually presenting her capstone at grand rounds in her medical school because there was so much excitement about the work that she had done in positive psychology. So it just gives you an idea, that's one small story, but it's a snippet of what's possible, I think, with a MAPP degree and how some of that information begins to reinforce itself and to grow out in the community. So somebody's asked the question, do I need to be present during the capstone, and is April the final on-site? So in terms of our time together, April is the final class on-site. We have our students come back to us for a 6th on-site during the spring semester, and that's graduation. So that one is a party, and you definitely don't want to miss that. So you'll be able to engage in both the liberal and professional studies, smaller graduation, as well as the larger Penn graduation in May. For the capstone itself, it is an independent study, so our students are domiciled wherever it is they live while they do the capstone. You are not required to be on campus for the capstone. Okay, perhaps we might take one more question, and then somebody had asked earlier if this was being recorded. It will be, and we've got about 5 minutes left, so perhaps we can answer one more question and then spend some time letting you know how you find out more information about the MAPP program. So somebody has asked, what happens if you need to miss an on-site or if there are travel delays? So on rare occasions, some of our students may find that they have something that comes up that might prevent their ability to travel into Philadelphia. Those things can range from a health emergency to a winter storm that grounds airplanes, to a non-winter storm like a hurricane that might keep people from being able to get into Philadelphia. And of course, travel delays are a part of life. By and large, people usually plan well to be able to arrive in enough time to mitigate any of the issues with those delays. But if somebody were to find that they've had an emergency where they cannot be in class, a very distant second in terms of the quality of experience is that we will offer a simulcast from our classroom so that you can follow along with the lectures from afar. I characterize that as a distant second because it's like watching television. You actually will, watch what's going on in the classroom, but that's very different than, and while you may be able to ask questions through us, that's different than being able to turn to a classmate and say, gosh, did you hear that stuff that they were talking about with intrinsic and extrinsic, and starting, wanting to kind of hash that through and speak about that. Or being able to, chase down a professor who's on a break and say, can I ask you a little bit more about what you meant when you said this? So those opportunities are things that obviously you're not going to be able to engage in, but we don't want you to miss content if an emergency should occur, and we'll be able to try and make sure that that does not occur. So I think that we're nearing the end of our time, and we do want to remain on time and release you at the top of the hour. As I had mentioned earlier, if there's anything that you weren't able to get during this session, we will be releasing a recording. And then in addition, you can also send questions to us, and we're going to share with you right now a slide that has our contact information from the MAPP program. So you'll note here that you have the opportunity to either call or email us. Our colleague Laura Taylor, who is a MAPP graduate herself. So Laura is a MAPP alumnus who graduated, or an alumna, who graduated in 2014. So Laura is standing by, and she really has, as you can imagine, as an alumna herself, a rich amount of information because she's been through the admissions process herself, she's been through the program herself, she has had conversations with these faculty members, so you can ask her questions too about what it's like to be in the program and what that experience is like. So we encourage you to reach out to her. You can do that via email or call her via phone, and then she'll triage those questions, and if she can't answer it, be able to pass it on to a faculty member who can. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight that date of March 1st, 2018. That is a hard date, and that also is a shared date with our Christopher Peterson Memorial Fund application. So if you were interested in applying for that scholarship, that March 1st date is something that you should also pay attention to for that. So I think at this point, I think we're ready to wrap up. We are so honestly grateful that you were joining us. This was a generous allocation of your time to come, to be able to listen to us, to hear about our experiences, and for us to share with you the experiences of our faculty, our alumni, and the administrators who helped to make this program operate as it's now entering its 13th year. So as you think about your corner of the world, whose well-being do you want to raise? Where do you want to increase flourishing where you work? As you think about those things, you may find yourself wondering whether or not you should be joining us in our classroom at the University of Pennsylvania. We hope that you will. Please do reach out to us with questions and hope to see you in the classroom in the fall.